In this tutorial, I'm going to address a question that's been asked by a student. The question was to do with images. Effectively, how can you make an image have rounded edges to become like a circle or an ellipse? Well, there's a number of ways you could do this. The first way is you could actually just take that image into a drawing program and cut a circle around it, and then upload that new image with its transparency in the background and use that on your website. But there is another way of doing this. You can get the web browser to do it for you. So to do this, I'm going to cover the code very simply, but then I'm going to, after doing this simple example, go a little bit further. And I'm going to bring in some ideas that get addressed in a week or two that might be useful if you want to do different things to different images on the same web page. So let's begin. So I'm going to add two images to my document. I'm going to add this picture of a parchment, which is just a big rectangle. And I'm going to add a picture of a house, which we've seen before. So to do these, I'm just going to add image tags. I will do the parchment first, and then I'll add the other one later. So image, now source src. Note that it is src. I've seen a couple of people do scr. And I'll close the tag. Now the image I'm going to put in is parchment.jpg. And I'm going to just give it a width of 400 pixels. Now when I open the browser, there's my parchment. It's a rectangular image, it shows up as a rectangle. Now in a previous tutorial, we got introduced to a style tag, which we used in the header. So I'm going to put a style tag in. Now in our previous tutorial, we used the style tag on the body element to change its background color. Now body here matched the word body down here in the tag. So we can do a similar thing here. Here the tag code is img. So I can go img. Now at the moment I haven't put any properties into this. What I am going to put into this is I'm going to put in some code that's going to make the corners slightly rounded. So border, radius, and I'm going to set it to 30 pixels. Now I will reload, and now my image has round corners. And the distance from this to the top is 30 pixels. It's the radius. Imagine there is a quarter circle on each corner. Now I could set that to a percentage as well. Here I've set it to an absolute value, 30 pixels in both directions. But if I set that to a percentage and refresh, it has now gone 30% of the distance from here to here, vertically down, and at the same time it's gone 30% of the distance from this corner horizontally. And it's done the same at each. So we start to get this elliptical situation. Now if I make my border radius 50% and refresh, now I get a nice ellipse or an oval. Now the reason it is an ellipse is because our image was a rectangle. But we know how to distort that. So if I set my width to 400 and my height to 400 pixels as well, and I reload, now my image is 400 wide by 400 high, and my corner radius is 50%, so I get a perfect circle. And it doesn't matter if I drop this down to, say, 200, and make this 200 as well, and reload, I still get a perfect circle. That's because we're dealing with percentages. If I was dealing with pixel values, I would get different effects. So let's add a second image. I'm going to add the house image. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it. And my house picture was house.png. Now I'm going to go further. Initially, what we've done so far is sufficient to make one image on the page a circle. Now, if you only have one image on the page, that's fine. However, now we have multiple images. Let's see what happens. Now I have multiple images, and it is a little hard to see, but this is cut into a perfect circle as well. So what I will do, I will just change this to show the same image. Just make it very clear. Now I have two perfect circles next to each other. Why both of them have been affected is because they both have the IMG tag. So this says any item in the body that has an IMG tag at a border radius of 50%. And that's what it has done. So if you do this, it will make every image on the page into a circle, or an ellipse if it's not square. But what if you didn't want that? What if you wanted, say, the first item to be a circle image, and the second one to be a square? Well, that's where we can get a little bit complicated. Well, not really complicated. We just have to do things differently. So I'm going to do some theory down here. And you'll get this same theory lesson next week sometime. But this is a bonus tutorial and we need the knowledge now. So let's think about school. In school, just say everyone was given a student tag. How can I tell the first student apart from the second student? Well, the way it works in the system is you are all given an ID number. It's probably on your student card. So I could just set this student to an ID of 123 and this student to an ID of 122. They're both students, but they have their own unique IDs. That's what differentiates them. I can do the same thing up here. I've got these images. I can give each one, if I want, its own ID. I don't have to give them an ID, but I can. So I will call this ID first. Now, how do I find this particular one that has an ID of first, as opposed to this particular one, the second one that has no ID at all, or might have a different ID? What we do is, instead of writing IMG, we write hashtag, because that's where hashtags come from, and we put the ID in first. So hashtag, and then the ID, will mean that this property is only applied to the element that has the ID of first. So if this runs, we should see this first one as a circle and the second one as a square. So we'll load up and refresh, and there we go. The first one is a circle and the second one, as expected, is a square. So let's just copy and one more of these, actually maybe two, just for the sake of it, and load up and let's have a look. Now we can see that in fact it really does work. This first one is the only one affected and the rest of them remain square. And I can do more IDs. Second. And up here, I will just copy this and paste. And for hashtag second, which is this one down here, I'm going to give it a radius of 10%. So it should be a square with rounded corners, and the other two should be straight squares. So I'll refresh, and there it is. My first one has a radius of 50%, becomes a circle. My second one has a radius of 10%, becomes a square with rounded edges, and the others have no effect applied to them.